I feel like people need to be taught a good lesson when they mess with women, especially when a mafia boss is just around the corner. That's what we're getting into today. But before we step into the underworld, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. It helps our family grow and ensure you never miss a new release. I want this comment section to be buzzing today. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you tuning in from? And while you're listening, timestamp your favorite parts. If a scene makes you laugh or swoon, let me know right when it happens. Are you ready? Let's get into the story. The bullet was already in the air when Kang Jae-min realized he'd made the one mistake he'd sworn never to make. He'd fallen in love. It happened in the space between heartbeats, that crystalline moment when time stretches like taffy, and you can see every decision that led you to this particular apocalypse. The warehouse was burning. His men were dying. And Amara Okafor, the Nigerian exchange student who'd somehow become his entire world in 3 impossible months, was screaming his name from across a floor slick with blood and broken glass. The shooter was Park Dong-wook, his former lieutenant, a man Jae-min had trusted with his life. The betrayal tasted like copper and gasoline. But worse than the betrayal, worse than the bullet that would either kill him or miss him in the next half-second, was the look on Amara's face, pure terror mixed with something that looked dangerously like love. How the hell did I get here? Jae-min thought as the world moved in slow motion. How did the wolf become a man who dies for a woman he's known for 90 days? The answer, like all good disasters, started with the best of intentions and the worst possible timing. 3 months earlier, the neon lights of Gangnam District painted the wet pavement in electric blues and pinks that October evening. Rain fell like silk curtains over Seoul, the kind of rain that makes poets write love songs and makes criminals think twice about bloodshed, except when they don't. Kang Jae-min hadn't become the most feared man in Seoul's underground by thinking twice about anything. At 32, he ruled the Midnight Dragons with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of winter. They called him Nukdi the wolf, not because he hunted in packs, but because he hunted alone, and when he found his prey, there was never anything left but whispers. His empire stretched from the luxury nightclubs of Gangnam to the shipping docks of Incheon. Politicians answered his calls before their wives. Police captains bought him lunch. He wore custom Italian suits that cost more than most people's cars, and his smile, rare as a blue moon, could either make you rich or make you disappear. The Midnight Dragons controlled everything worth controlling in Seoul's underworld. Protection rackets that actually protected, loan operations that kept families afloat at a price, and a smuggling network so sophisticated it could move anything from antibiotics to impressionist paintings without raising a single customs flag. Jae-min ran it all from a penthouse in Gangnam that cost more per month than most people earned in a year. Surrounded by luxury he barely noticed and loyalty he'd purchased with blood. But tonight, Kang Jae-min was simply tired. Tired of the blood that never washed off completely, no matter how expensive the soap. Tired of respect built on fear, which wasn't really respect at all, just performed deference from people who'd smile at your funeral. Tired of waking up in penthouses that felt like tombs, all marble and silence and the echo of his own footsteps. He'd just left a meeting with a city councilman who'd wanted to renegotiate their arrangement, which was politician speak for, I want more money for doing even less. Jae-min had smiled, agreed to the new terms, and made a mental note to have the man's mistress photographed at their next rendezvous. Not to use the photos, necessarily. Just to have them. Insurance, like everything else in his life. The rain had started during the meeting, and now it fell in sheets that turned the city into a watercolor painting. Jae-min's driver was circling the block. He didn't like staying parked in one place, a habit from the early days when rivals would booby-trap cars, which meant Jae-min had a 5-minute walk to the pickup point. He was heading to his car when he heard it, a scream that cut through the rain like a knife through silk. Most people in Seoul knew better than to scream in this neighborhood. The sound was either genuine terror or a trap, and Jae-min hadn't survived this long by running towards suspicious situations. But something about that scream, the raw desperation in it, the way it seemed to claw at the air, made him pause. Then he heard the second scream, followed by a man's voice, slurred and ugly. Jaemin changed direction. Amara Okafor had learned many things in her 2 years studying international business at Seoul National University. She learned that kimchi really does taste better the longer it ferments, that Korean grandmothers could adopt you with a single meal if you showed proper respect and genuine appreciation for their cooking, and that her melodic Igbo-accented Korean made shopkeepers smile and sometimes give her extra dumplings. She'd learned that Seoul was a city of layers, ancient palaces hiding between glass skyscrapers, traditional tea houses tucked down alleys lined with neon, a place where past and future collided every day and somehow made it work. She'd learned that being a black woman in Korea meant constant stares, some curious, some kind, some less so. She'd learned to navigate it all with grace, humor, and a thick skin her mother had helped her develop back in Lagos. What she hadn't learned was how to make Minjun understand that it's over meant it's actually over, not please stalk me for 6 months while I gradually lose my mind. Her ex-boyfriend, a trust fund philosophy major who thought Nietzsche gave him license to be an asshole and Camus gave him permission to be emotionally unavailable, had been texting her 40 times a day. When blocking didn't work, when campus security warnings didn't work, when her friends' interventions didn't work, when her threats to contact his wealthy family didn't work, Minjun did what entitled men have done since the dawn of time. He escalated. He'd started showing up at her classes, her favorite coffee shop, the library, always with the same wounded expression, as if she were the villain in the story. Always with the same speech about how she didn't understand what they had, how she was making a mistake, how nobody else would ever love her the way he did, which, given how he'd loved her, was more threat than promise. Tonight, he'd found her outside the cafe where she worked part-time, his face twisted with soju and wounded pride. The rain had cleared the streets, giving him an audience of only shadows and neon signs, perfect for a man who wanted to make a scene without real consequences. You think you can just throw me away? Minjun slurred, grabbing her wrist with fingers that felt like a vice. After everything I did for you? I made you popular. Nobody even knew your name before me. Amara jerked her arm back, her heart hammering. She'd dealt with drunk Minjun before, but this was different. This was darker. Minjun, go home. Please. We're done. You need to accept that. Done? Done. His voice climbed to a pitch that would have been comedic if it weren't terrifying, like a tea kettle whistling before it explodes. You don't get to decide when we're done. You're just some exchange student. You should be grateful I even looked at you. And there it was, the racism that had always lurked beneath his progressive exterior like mold under expensive wallpaper. She'd seen glimpses of it during their relationship. The way he'd fetishized her difference, collected her like she was exotic merchandise, paraded her around his wealthy friends like she was proof of his open-mindedness. She should have known then. The red flags had been waving so hard they could have generated electricity. Go. Home. Amara said each word like a separate sentence, her Nigerian accent thickening the way it did when she was angry or scared. Right now, she was both. When she turned to walk away, he grabbed her hair. The first yank snapped her head back so hard she saw stars, actual stars, white bursts of pain behind her eyes. The second dragged her off her feet. She hit the wet pavement hard, her bag spilling open, textbooks, lipstick, her grandmother's rosary scattering like prayers across the concrete, each item a small piece of her life suddenly vulnerable to the rain. Look at you now, Minjun screamed, dragging her by her braids like she was a doll, like she was nothing, like 2 years of her carefully crafted dignity could be erased in one drunken tantrum. Not so proud now, are you? You bitch. You ungrateful bitch. Amara tried to scream, but rain and shock stole her voice. She clawed at his hands, felt one of her nails break against his skin, but he was stronger, drunker, angrier. The world became a blur of wet asphalt and neon reflections and the horrible realization that no one was coming to help, that she was alone, that this was how it ended. Not with a bang, but with a whimper on a Seoul side street while the rain washed away any evidence of her humiliation. Then Minjun's hand disappeared from her hair. Kang Jae-min had killed exactly 7 men in his life. Each one deserved it. Each one necessary. each one filed away in the locked drawer of his conscience where he kept things he didn't like to examine too closely. He'd broken bones, burned buildings, destroyed lives with a phone call. He'd done things that would make ordinary people lose sleep for years. But he'd never, not once, laid hands on a woman. It was one of his few absolute rules, taught to him by his mother before she died, before the streets raised him, before he became the wolf. A man who hits a woman, she'd said, is not a man at all. He's a coward wearing a man's clothes. What he saw in that alley made something ancient and furious wake up in his chest, something that predated the mafia boss, the calculated killer, the businessman in blood. Something primal and protective and absolutely murderous. The boy, because that's all he was, really, a spoiled boy with expensive clothes and empty eyes, didn't even see Jaemin coming. One moment he was yanking the woman by her hair, screaming obscenities that would make sailors blush. The next he was airborne, crashing into a dumpster with a sound like a car accident, all screeching metal and surprised agony. "Get up," Jaemin said quietly, rain streaming down his face, his voice carrying the kind of calm that precedes hurricanes. Minjun looked up from his heap of designer clothes and shattered dignity, saw the man in the black suit, saw the dragon tattoo creeping up his neck like smoke-made flesh, saw Death standing there wearing Italian leather and a very patient expression, and promptly pissed himself. It made a small puddle that the rain mercifully washed away, though the stain on Minjun's pride would last considerably longer. "I said get up." Jaemin's voice was soft, which somehow made it worse. His men knew that whisper voice. It meant someone was about to learn a very permanent lesson about consequences and regret. "I didn't, she's my girlfriend, I was just," Minjun stammered, trying to scramble backward, but the dumpster blocked his escape. Funny how bullies always became philosophers about consent and context when someone bigger showed up. "She's on the ground." Jaemin took a step forward, each footfall deliberate, measured. "You put her there. Now you're going to learn about gravity too." What happened next took 45 seconds and would require Minjun to eat through a straw for 6 weeks, drink through another straw for 4, and reconsider his life choices for considerably longer. Jaemin moved with the efficiency of a man who'd turned violence into art form, precise, economic, devastating. A punch to the solar plexus to fold him. A knee to the face to educate him. Targeted strikes to ribs that would heal, but hurt like hell in the meantime. Not enough to kill. Just enough to educate. Just enough to ensure Minjun would flinch every time he saw a woman with braids for the rest of his miserable life. When it was over, Minjun was a sobbing heap of regret and broken ribs, and Jaemin turned to the woman still on the ground. She was staring at him with eyes the color of warm earth, tears mixing with rain on her dark skin, her hair still perfect despite everything. How was that even possible? Her chin lifted in defiance even as she trembled. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with symmetry or conventional standards, beautiful in the way that storms are beautiful, in the way that things that survive become beautiful. And King Jaemin the wolf, the man who'd felt nothing but cold calculation for 5 years, who'd trained himself to see people as pieces on a board, felt his heart do something it hadn't done since he was a boy. It cracked. Just a hairline fracture. But enough. Chapter 2. The Wolf's Weakness. "Can you stand?" Jaemin asked in Korean, then repeated in English when she just stared, her shock momentarily overriding her impressive language skills. "I think so," Amara whispered, her accent making the words musical somehow, each syllable carrying the rhythm of a different continent, a different worldview, a different kind of strength than he was used to. He offered his hand. She hesitated because she'd just watched this man dismantle her ex-boyfriend like he was defusing a bomb, with the same clinical efficiency, then took it. Her hand was small in his, warm despite the rain, and when she stood, she barely reached his shoulder. She was wearing a cafe uniform and cheap sneakers that had seen better days, and she looked at him like he was simultaneously her savior and her next problem. "Smart girl." "Thank you," she said, then immediately started gathering her scattered belongings with shaking hands, as if this were just another Tuesday, as if she got dragged by her hair in public every week and had developed a system for the aftermath. "Leave him," Jaemin said when Minjun groaned, trying to crawl away like a wounded cockroach. He'll live. Unfortunately. She looked at the broken boy, then back at Jaemin, and something like dark humor flickered across her face, the kind of humor people develop when life keeps throwing punches, and you either laugh or break. You know, in my country, we have a saying, the dog that will get lost will not hear the whistle. I warned him so many times. Despite everything, the violence, the rain, the adrenaline still singing through his veins, Jaemin smiled. Actually smiled. Not the calculated smile he used in business, not the predatory smile that preceded threats, but a genuine expression of amusement that felt foreign on his face, like speaking a language he'd forgotten he knew. Your country has wise sayings, he said. Nigeria has a saying for everything. Sometimes 3 sayings for the same situation, just to cover all the angles. She was shivering now, shock settling in, her hands still trembling as she clutched her recovered belongings. Her grandmother's rosary was muddy but intact. I should go. Call the police or something. No police. The words came out sharper than he intended. The last thing he needed was cops asking questions, running his face through databases, connecting dots that were better left unconnected. Her eyes narrowed. You just assaulted someone. I mean, he deserved it. God, did he deserve it, but still. That's kind of a police situation. Trust me, Jaemin said, pulling out his phone. This is handled better my way. That boy comes from a powerful family. You call the police. They'll make this your fault. You're a foreign student. He's Korean elite. How do you think that ends? Amara's jaw tightened because she knew he was right, hated that he was right, hated the calculus that made being right feel like losing. So what, he just gets away with it? He just got his ribs rearranged and his dignity destroyed. He'll think twice before touching another woman. And if he doesn't? Jaemin's smile turned cold. I'll know. How will you know? I make it my business to know things. She studied him for a long moment, this strange man in an expensive suit who'd appeared like some kind of avenging angel or avenging demon. The jury was still out. Who are you? Someone who doesn't like bullies. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. The whole truth would send her running, and for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he didn't want her to run. His phone buzzed. His driver, asking about the delay. Jaemin typed back quickly, change of plans. Pick me up in 30. You're soaked, he said, noticing for the first time how the rain had plastered her uniform to her skin, how she was shaking from cold as much as shock. There's a cafe 2 blocks from here. Let me buy you something hot. Make sure you're okay. I'm fine. You're shaking. I'm fine, she insisted, then immediately contradicted herself by swaying slightly, her body deciding that fine was negotiable. Jaemin caught her elbow, studying her. Humor me. 10 minutes. 1 coffee. Then I'll call you a cab home, and you'll never have to see me again. Why? Amara asked, the question direct, challenging. Why do you care? It was a good question. Why did he care? He'd seen plenty of violence in his life, caused most of it. He'd walked past suffering before. Seoul was full of small tragedies, and he'd never appointed himself their solution. But something about this moment, this woman with her chin up and her grandmother's rosary clutched in muddy hands, this woman who quoted Nigerian proverbs after being assaulted, this woman who looked at him like she could see past the expensive suit to something he'd thought he'd buried years ago, something about all of it made him want to do the one thing he'd taught himself never to do. Care. Because, he said finally, it's raining. And, because I'm tired of being the kind of person who walks away. The cafe was called Moonlight Dreams, which was the kind of aggressively optimistic name that only worked in Seoul, where cute culture and corporate dystopia somehow coexisted in perfect harmony. It was warm inside, smelling of coffee and red bean paste, populated by students studying for exams and young couples sharing elaborate desserts that looked like Instagram came to life. Amara ordered hot chocolate. Coffee at this hour will keep me up all night, and I have a macroeconomics exam tomorrow that I'm already going to fail because my brain is currently soup, and Jaemin ordered Americano because that's what he always ordered, the bitter simplicity matching his aesthetic. They sat by the window, watching the rain turn Seoul into an impressionist painting, and for a few minutes, neither spoke. Jaemin studied her over his coffee cup, noting details. The way she wrapped both hands around her mug like she was protecting something precious, the small scar on her left eyebrow, the way her eyes flickered to the door every few minutes, checking for Minjun. Probably, making sure her nightmare hadn't followed her. So, Amara said finally, her voice steadier now, the hot chocolate working its magic. You're either a very good person or a very dangerous one. I'm trying to figure out which. Can't I be both? In my experience, no. Good people hesitate before they hurt someone. You didn't hesitate. Sharp. Too sharp. Jaemin felt the familiar calculation kicking in, how much to reveal, how much to deflect, how to be honest enough to be trusted, but vague enough to stay safe. Maybe I just really hate men who hurt women. That's not an answer. It's the answer you're getting. He softened it with a smile. What's your name? Amara. Amara Okafor. She paused. And you are? Jaemin. Just Jaemin? No last name? Not tonight. She laughed, sharp and a little bitter. Right. Man of mystery. Why not? This whole night is already surreal. Might as well add an anonymous vigilante to the mix. Tell me about the exam, Jaemin said, changing the subject with the smoothness of long practice. Macroeconomics. Why do you care? Because you're worried about it, and I'm curious. Amara studied him with those earth-colored eyes, clearly trying to solve the puzzle he presented. Finally, she shrugged. Professor Kim's class. He's brilliant, but explains things like he's talking to other economists instead of students. I've been studying for weeks, but I don't know if it's enough. International students have to maintain a certain GPA or we lose our visas, and with everything that's been happening with Minjun. She trailed off, stirring her hot chocolate with unnecessary focus. The stalking, Jaemin supplied. 6 months of it. 6 months of looking over my shoulder, 6 months of blocked numbers and campus security reports that went nowhere, 6 months of being told I was overreacting or that he was just passionate about our relationship. Her voice hardened. You know what his mother told me when I went to her for help? She said I should be flattered. Flattered. Because her precious son was showing interest in someone like me. Someone like you. Foreign. Black. Not from their world. Amara met his eyes. I'm not stupid. I knew dating him would be complicated. Korea isn't exactly known for its diversity, and rich Korean families definitely aren't lining up to welcome Nigerian daughters-in-law. But I thought he was different. He said all the right things about equality and justice and seeing beyond color. Turns out, words are cheap. Especially when they come from someone who's never had to back them up with action. Jaemin found himself angry on her behalf, which was unusual. He was angry for people frequently, it was good for business, maintaining loyalty through selective rage, but angry on behalf of someone required actual empathy, actual connection, actual give a damn that went beyond strategic calculation. He won't bother you again, Jaemin said quietly. How can you promise that? Because I keep my promises. He pulled out his phone, typed quickly. What's your number? Why? Because if he contacts you again, I want to know. And then what? You'll beat him up again? I appreciate the rescue, but I can't have a personal bodyguard every time my ex gets drunk and nostalgic. You won't need one. One more conversation with him should solve the problem permanently. There was something in the way he said it that made Amara pause, really look at him. The expensive suit that fit too perfectly to be off the rack. The way he held himself, relaxed but ready, like a weapon at rest. The dragon tattoo she could just see peeking above his collar. The phone that had buzzed 6 times during their conversation, each buzz making him glance at the screen with an expression that mixed annoyance with absolute authority. You're not just some good Samaritan, are you? She asked slowly. No. Are you going to tell me what you actually are? No. Should I be scared of you? Jaemin considered the question seriously, gave it the respect it deserved. Probably. But not tonight. Tonight, I'm just someone who bought you hot chocolate. Amara laughed, surprising herself. This is insane. This whole situation is insane. I should be traumatized. I should be filing police reports. Instead, I'm sitting in a cafe with a mysterious stranger who may or may not be some kind of criminal. Drinking hot chocolate like this is a normal Tuesday. Is it helping? Jaemin asked. The hot chocolate? Surprisingly, yes. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the rain, and Jaemin realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd just sat with someone. His life was meetings and negotiations and territory disputes. Even his rare relationships, transactions really, based on mutual benefit and emotional distance, were conducted with the efficiency of business deals. This was different. This was just being. It was terrifying. I should go, Amara said finally, checking her phone. My roommate is probably freaking out. I texted her that I'd be home an hour ago. I'll call you a cab. I can't afford. I'm calling you a cab, Jaemin interrupted gently. Consider it part of the rescue package. Damsel in distress, knight in tarnished armor, cab ride home. Full service operation. She smiled despite herself. Tarnished armor? I'm self-aware enough to know I'm no white knight. Good. I don't trust white knights. They usually want something in return. Smart. He pulled up a taxi app, arranged the ride. 5 minutes. Amara stood, gathering her still damp belongings, and hesitated. Thank you. Really. For everything. For stopping. For caring. For not being another person who walked past. You're welcome. She turned to leave, then turned back. Jaemin. Yes. Whatever you are, whoever you are, I hope you know that tonight, you were a good person. Whatever else is true, that's true too. She left before he could respond, disappearing into the rain and the soul night, leaving Jaemin sitting alone with cold Americano and a feeling he couldn't quite name. His phone buzzed again. Park Dong-wook, his lieutenant. Boss, we have a problem at the Incheon warehouse. The Chinese are pushing back on the new terms. Jaemin stared at the message, then at the door where Amara had just exited, then back at the message. 2 worlds. His world of blood and money and carefully maintained power. And her world of exams and dreams and grandmother's rosaries. They shouldn't intersect. Couldn't intersect. He typed back, handle it. I'll be there in an hour. But as he stood to leave, as he stepped back into the rain and his waiting car, as he prepared to return to being the wolf, Kang Jaemin made a decision that would change everything. He was going to see her again. The Incheon warehouse smelled like fish and motor oil and the particular tension that preceded violence. Jaemin's men were gathered in the main floor, 12 of them, his inner circle, the ones who'd been with him since the beginning or had proven their loyalty in blood. Park Dong-wook stood at the center, a tablet in hand, his expression grim. At 35, Park was Jaemin's oldest friend, the one who'd helped him build the Midnight Dragons from a street gang into an empire. Scarred, cynical, absolutely ruthless, and loyal to a fault. The Chinese want 50-50 split instead of 60-40, Park said without preamble. They say the risk is equal, so the profit should be too. The risk is not equal, Jaemin replied calmly, shrugging off his wet jacket. We provide the routes, the contacts, the protection. They provide product. That's worth 40%, not 50. They're threatening to go to the Japanese. Then let them. Jaemin pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts. The Japanese will demand 70-30 and execute anyone who misses a deadline. The Chinese will be back in a week, begging for our original terms. Park grinned. You're a cold bastard, boss. I'm a businessman. There's a difference. Jaemin paused, looking at his assembled men. Anyone hurt in tonight's negotiations? Kim took a punch to the kidney, but he's fine. Gave back worse. Good. Jaemin made a mental note to check on Kim later, make sure he got proper medical attention. Loyalty flowed both ways. What else? Senator Cho is asking for a meeting. Says he has information about a police crackdown coming next month. Information or blackmail? With Cho? Probably both. Jaemin nodded. Set it up. Somewhere public. I don't trust him not to record. They spent the next hour going through business, debts collected, territory secured, politicians bribed, rivals warned. The machinery of his empire, well-oiled and efficient. By the time they finished, it was past midnight, and Jaemin was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. "Boss," Park said as the others filed out. "You okay? You seem distracted." "I'm fine." "You're never distracted. What happened tonight?" Jaemin considered lying, decided against it. Park had known him too long. "I helped someone." "A woman being attacked by her ex. You? Help someone?" Park's eyebrows climbed. "Did hell freeze over, or did I miss a memo?" "Fuck off," Jaemin said without heat. "Seriously though, you never get involved in civilian stuff. That's like rule number 3. After, don't trust the Russians and always count the money twice." She needed help. Park studied him with eyes that had seen too much to be fooled by casual deflection. "Uh-huh. And this woman, did she happen to be attractive?" "That's not relevant." "So she was attractive." "Great." "Boss, please tell me you're not thinking about." "I'm not thinking about anything," Jaemin interrupted. "I helped her. It's done. We're moving on." "Right. Moving on." Park didn't sound convinced. "You know what happened to Huang, right? Got involved with a civilian, thought he could keep the world separate. Didn't end well." "I remember." Jaemin had been the one to attend Huang's funeral, had been the one to put money in his widow's account every month for 5 years afterward. "But I'm not Huang." "No, you're worse. You're smarter, which means when you do something stupid, it's going to be spectacularly stupid. Your faith in me is touching." "My faith in you is absolute." "My faith in your judgment around women is non-existent." "Remember me, son? The art dealer." She was actually an art dealer. She was also Interpol, and she nearly destroyed us. "Nearly doesn't count," Jaemin said, but Park had a point. His romantic history was a minefield of bad decisions and narrow escapes. Which was exactly why he'd stopped having a romantic history 3 years ago. Easier. Safer. Smarter. So why was he standing here at midnight, thinking about earth-colored eyes and Nigerian proverbs? "Just be careful," Park said quietly, dropping the teasing. "This life, our life, it doesn't leave room for normal. You know that better than anyone." "I know." But as Jaemin drove home through empty Seoul streets, as he showered away the smell of the warehouse, as he lay in his enormous bed in his enormous penthouse staring at his enormous ceiling, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Amara Okafor. Exchange student. Economics major. Survivor. The woman who'd looked at him like he was simultaneously dangerous and decent, who'd thanked him for being a good person even though good people didn't run criminal empires, who'd disappeared into the rain without giving him her number. He shouldn't try to find her. Shouldn't pull strings, shouldn't use his resources to track down one foreign student in a city of 10 million. But Kong Jaemin hadn't become the wolf by ignoring his instincts. And his instincts were screaming that Amara Okafor was going to change everything. Chapter 3. The Price of Protection. Amara didn't believe in fate, destiny, or any of the romantic nonsense that filled Korean dramas. She believed in hard work, good luck, and the importance of carrying pepper spray, though the pepper spray hadn't helped much when Minjun grabbed her hair. So when she saw Jaemin standing outside her macroeconomics class 3 days later, she refused to believe the universe was trying to tell her something. The universe didn't care about Nigerian exchange students and mysterious men in expensive suits. The universe was chaos with good marketing. "You're stalking me now?" she asked, walking right past him toward the campus coffee cart. "Because I've had enough stalking to last a lifetime, thanks." "Not stalking," Jaemin said, falling into step beside her. His suit today was charcoal gray, paired with a black shirt that made him look like he was either heading to a funeral or planning one. "Checking in. You don't have my number. You don't know my last name. You definitely don't know where I go to school." She stopped, turned to face him. "Actually, wait. How do you know where I go to school?" "You mentioned Seoul National University." The cafe uniform had a name tag that said Amara. The rest was easy. The rest was creepy. Fair point. He had the audacity to look slightly sheepish. "In my defense, I wanted to make sure you were okay. After the other night." Amara studied him in daylight, which was different from rain-soaked darkness. He was handsome, not in the soft, manufactured way of K-pop stars, but in a harder, more dangerous way. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that missed nothing, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile until it remembered by accident. The dragon tattoo crawled up his neck like it was trying to escape from wherever he kept his secrets. Students were staring. Of course they were staring. A man who looked like organized crime had taken human form was standing in the middle of campus during lunch hour, talking to the black exchange student everyone already whispered about. "I'm fine," Amara said quietly. "Minjun hasn't contacted me. I'm sleeping better. My exam went surprisingly well, probably because I was too exhausted to be anxious. Everything's fine." "Good. So you can leave now." "I could," Jaemin agreed. "Or you could let me buy you lunch." "Why would I do that?" "Because you're a student, which means you're probably hungry, and I'm offering free food." "There's no such thing as free food." "Smart. But sometimes food is just food." He gestured toward the campus gate. "There's a jjigae place 2 blocks from here. Best kimchi stew in Seoul." "I promise not to ask invasive questions or reveal any more disturbing information about how I tracked you down." Amara should have said no. Every self-preservation instinct she possessed was screaming at her to say no, to walk away, to not get involved with whatever this man clearly was. But she was hungry, and tired, and still a little shaken from the attack, even if she wouldn't admit it. And there was something about Jaemin that didn't feel dangerous to her, even if he was clearly dangerous to everyone else. "One lunch," she said. "And you're going to answer some questions." "One lunch," he agreed. "And I'll answer what I can." The jjigae restaurant was exactly the kind of place tourists never found, tiny, cramped, run by a grandmother who looked like she could kill you with disappointment if you didn't finish your food. The walls were covered with fading photographs and handwritten menus, and the smell of fermented soybeans and chili paste was so strong it was practically sentient. "Halmiani," Jaemin called out to the grandmother, his formal Korean suddenly warm and respectful. "2 kimchi jjigae, extra tofu." The old woman looked up, squinted at Jaemin, then broke into a smile that transformed her entire face. "Ah, Jaemin. Too long. You never visit anymore." "I've been busy, Halmiani." "Too busy to eat?" "Too busy to see the woman who fed you when you were a skinny street rat." She switched her attention to Amara, the squint turning evaluative. "And who is this?" "Finally, you bring a girl. A pretty girl. A black girl, unusual, but pretty." "Halmiani, please don't." "Is she your girlfriend? Are you taking care of her? Feeding her properly?" The grandmother bustled over, peering at Amara like she was inspecting produce. "You're too thin. He's not feeding you properly. Men are useless. I'll make you extra portions." Amara couldn't help but laugh. "We're not dating. We just met." Just met can become married very quickly. "I met my husband on Tuesday, married him on Saturday. 52 years we had together before he died. May he rest in peace, the stubborn old goat." She patted Amara's cheek with a hand that smelled like garlic and affection. "You eat well, you get strong. Then you decide if this one is worth keeping." She disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Amara and Jaemin sitting across from each other in awkward silence. "She seems nice," Amara said finally. "She fed me when I was 15. Gave me a job washing dishes when no one else would hire me. Probably saved my life." Jaemin's expression softened in a way Amara hadn't seen before. "She doesn't know what I do now. What I became. I'd like to keep it that way." "What did you become?" "You said you had questions. That wasn't one of them. It's implied in all my questions." The food arrived, massive stone bowls of bubbling stew, rice, and approximately 15 side dishes that covered every available surface. The grandmother stood over them until they started eating, nodding approval when Amara made appreciative sounds. "So," Amara said after the grandmother left. "Questions. Let's start easy. What do you do for a living?" "I'm a businessman." "What kind of business?" "Import-export. Consulting. Various investments." "That's deliberately vague." "Yes." "Are you a criminal?" Jaemin paused, his spoon halfway to his mouth. "Define criminal." "Do you break the law?" "Sometimes." "Do you hurt people?" "Sometimes." "Are you going to hurt me?" "No." The answer was immediate, absolute. "Never." Amara studied him over her stew. "I should be running." Every rational part of my brain is telling me to run. Why aren't you? Because you saved me. Because you bought me hot chocolate. Because that grandmother clearly loves you, and people who are loved by grandmothers can't be all bad. She took another bite of stew, letting the heat and spice clear her head. Also, because I'm curious. And curiosity has always been my problem. Not a problem. A gift. Gifts can be dangerous. So can I, Jamin said quietly. Which is why you should listen to the rational part of your brain. Is this reverse psychology? Are you trying to make me more interested by telling me to stay away? No. I'm being honest. My life, my world, it's not safe. People around me get hurt. Not always physically, but there's always a cost. Then why are you here? Amara asked. Why find me? Why buy me lunch? If you're so dangerous, why not just leave me alone? It was the central question, and Jamin didn't have a good answer. Or rather, he had an answer he didn't want to examine too closely. Because he said finally, 3 nights ago, I was tired. Tired of being the wolf. Tired of being feared. Tired of waking up alone in a penthouse that costs more than most people make in a decade. And then I saw you, saw your courage, your humor, your humanity in the middle of the worst moment of your night, and I thought maybe I could remember what it feels like to be human too. The honesty surprised both of them. Amara was quiet for a long moment, just looking at him with those earth-colored eyes that seemed to see past all his carefully constructed defenses. The wolf, she asked finally. It's what they call me. In my world. Sounds lonely. It is. Then maybe, Amara said slowly, you should stop being the wolf for a while. Just be Jamin. See how that feels. I don't know if I remember how. Lucky for you, I'm a good teacher. They ate in companionable silence after that, and Jamin found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. There was something about Amara that made him want to be honest, want to be better, want to be the person she'd called him that rainy night, a good person. Even if it was a lie. Over the next 3 weeks, Jamin learned things about Amara Okafor that had nothing to do with intelligence gathering and everything to do with genuine fascination. He learned that she was 24, the youngest of 4 children, and that her mother ran a textile business in Lagos that was successful enough to send all 4 kids to university. He learned that she'd chosen Seoul specifically because she wanted to understand Asian markets, wanted to bring that knowledge back to Nigeria, wanted to build bridges between continents. He learned that she was funny, wickedly, sharply funny, with a talent for observation that would have made her dangerous in his world. She could read people, understand motivations, see through bullshit with the efficiency of an X-ray machine. He learned that she loved Korean food but hated Korean dating culture. Why does everyone want to know my blood type? What does blood type have to do with personality? It's blood. That she was terrible at karaoke but sang anyway. That she collected small rocks from every place she visited, keeping them in a jar in her tiny apartment, each one a memory made tangible. He learned that she was lonely too. Not desperately, not pathetically, but in the way people get lonely when they're far from home, far from family, far from anyone who understands the specific ache of being foreign in a place that's beautiful but not yours. And Amara learned things about him too. She learned that Jamin had been orphaned at 14, that he'd grown up on Seoul streets, that he'd built his empire from nothing through intelligence, ruthlessness, and an almost supernatural ability to read situations. She learned that he spoke 4 languages, that he'd never finished high school but read constantly, that he had opinions about everything from philosophy to film noir. She learned that underneath the wolf was a man who fed stray cats in his neighborhood, who sent money anonymously to the grandmother's restaurant when business was slow, who had never forgotten where he came from even as he climbed to the top of Seoul's underworld. She learned that he was gentle with her in a way he wasn't with anyone else. That his smiles, rare and precious, came more easily when she was around. That he looked at her like she was a miracle he didn't quite believe in. They fell into a routine, lunch twice a week, coffee on Fridays, late-night phone calls when she was stressed about exams and he was stressed about whatever it was crime bosses stressed about. He never talked about specifics and she never asked. There was an unspoken agreement between them. His world stayed separate, contained, locked away in whatever dark corner it occupied. It was working. Until it wasn't. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday evening in early November. Amara was walking home from the library, her head full of supply chain logistics and comparative advantage theory, when she noticed the car. Black sedan. Tinted windows. Following her for 3 blocks. She wasn't naive. She'd grown up in Lagos, had learned to spot threats the way other kids learned to spot birds. This was a threat. Amara pulled out her phone, texted Jaemin. Black sedan. Following me. License plate 879423. His response came in seconds. Stay on main streets. I'm coming. The sedan kept pace with her, never getting closer, never falling behind. Just watching. The message was clear. We know where you are, we know where you go, we know you matter to someone. Amara's heart hammered. She thought about running, about screaming, about all the self-defense moves her older brother had taught her. But she kept walking, kept her pace steady, kept her fear locked down where it couldn't control her. Jaemin's car appeared 5 minutes later, a black SUV that probably cost more than her entire education. He didn't get out, just pulled up beside her, window rolling down. Get in. She got in. The sedan behind them accelerated, pulled alongside them, window rolling down to reveal a man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow and a smile that promised violence. Kang Jaemin, the man called out in Korean. The wolf has found himself a new pet. How sweet. Jaemin's expression didn't change, but Amara felt the temperature in the car drop by several degrees. Drive away, Choi. This doesn't concern you. Everything about you concerns me, old friend. Especially when you're getting soft. Spending time with foreign students? Taking them to lunch? Very unlike the wolf I used to know. Last warning. Or what? You'll protect her? You'll choose her over business? Over respect? Over everything you've built? Choi laughed, ugly and knowing. You're already weak, Jaemin. You just don't know it yet. The light changed. Jaemin accelerated, leaving the sedan behind, but the damage was done. Who is that? Amara asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Someone who should know better than to threaten what's mine. What's yours? Jaemin glanced at her, and in his eyes she saw something that was equal parts terrifying and thrilling. You are. Whether you like it or not, whether I wanted it or not, you're under my protection now. Which means anyone who touches you answers to me. I didn't ask for protection. You didn't have to. Amara should have been angry. Should have demanded to be let out of the car, should have run from this man who was clearly dragging her into a world she wanted no part of. But instead, she asked, am I in danger? As long as I'm breathing? No. And if something happens to you? Then you run. You get on a plane, you go back to Nigeria, and you forget you ever met me. Not much of a plan. It's the best one I've got. They drove in silence to her apartment, and when they arrived, Jaemin walked her to her door, checking the hallway, the stairwell, every shadow. I'll have someone watching the building, he said. You won't see them, but they'll be there. Jaemin. This is my fault. I should have stayed away. Should have left you alone after that first night. But I'm selfish, and I'm stupid, and I wanted. He stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I wanted something real. Something that wasn't built on fear or money or blood. I wanted you. Amara reached up, touched his face, feeling the stubble rough against her palm. I wanted you too. Want. Present tense. You shouldn't. Probably not. But when has should ever stopped anyone from doing anything? She kissed him then, standing on her toes in the dingy hallway of her apartment building, kissing a crime boss like he was just a man, like they were just two people who'd found each other in a city of millions. Jaemin kissed her back with a gentleness that contradicted everything he was, everything he'd done. His hands were careful on her waist, like she was something precious, something that could break. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Amara smiled. So, we doing this? Doing what? Whatever this is. This spectacularly bad idea we're clearly committing to. Jaemin laughed, actually laughed. Yeah, we're doing this. Good. Because I have one rule. What's that? No more secrets. If we're together, if we're doing this, I need to know what I'm getting into. All of it. Jaemin looked at her for a long moment, weighing the cost of honesty against the cost of losing her. Okay, he said finally. No more secrets. It was a promise he would regret making. But not yet. Chapter 4: When Empires Crack. The truth came out over 3 nights in Jaemin's penthouse, delivered in carefully measured doses like medicine. Too much would poison, too little would leave the disease untreated. Night 1, he told her about the Midnight Dragons. How he'd built them from a street gang of hungry orphans into an organization that controlled half of Seoul's underground economy. Protection, smuggling, money laundering, political influence, all the machinery of organized crime, dressed up in expensive suits and conducted in upscale restaurants where deals were sealed over A5 Wagyu and 20-year-old whiskey. We don't deal drugs, he said, sprawled on his leather couch while Amara sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by the scattered evidence of his empire, ledgers, photographs, organizational charts that looked like corporate diagrams if you ignored the fact that half the positions were filled by men with names like Knife and Mad Dog. That's the line I won't cross. Everything else is negotiable. Why no drugs? Amara asked, studying a photograph of Jaemin with a group of hard-looking men outside what appeared to be a nightclub. He looked younger, hungrier, more dangerous, the wolf before he learned to wear civilization like a coat. Because I grew up with addicts. Saw what it did to them. To their families. To entire neighborhoods. His voice was flat, factual. I'm not claiming moral high ground. I'm a criminal. But I'm a criminal with standards. Standards, Amara repeated, not quite mocking, not quite believing. You hurt people. You extort money. You probably kill people who get in your way. But no drugs. That's your line. Everyone needs a line. What happens when someone crosses it? Jaemin met her eyes. They learn not to. Night 2, he told her about the violence. Not the sanitized version, not the Hollywood gangster fantasy, but the real cost of his empire. The beatings he'd ordered, the bones broken, the 3 men he'd killed personally, and the 4 others he'd ordered killed. Each one delivered with clinical precision, each one justified by the brutal mathematics of survival in a world where weakness meant death. I'm not asking you to forgive it, he said, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Seoul's glittering skyline. The city spread out below like a circuit board, each light a life. Each life a story he'd probably intersected with at some point. I'm not even asking you to understand it. I'm telling you the truth. Like you asked. Amara was quiet for a long time, processing. She'd known, intellectually, what he was. But knowing and knowing were different animals. One was abstract, manageable. The other had teeth. The 7 men you killed, she said finally. Tell me about them. Why? Because I need to know if you're a murderer or if you're a man who's killed. There's a difference. So he told her. The loan shark who'd been trafficking girls from the Philippines, selling them to brothels, ignoring Jaemin's warnings to stop. The rival gang leader who'd ordered a hit on Park Dong-wook's family, killing his sister, nearly killing his mother. The corrupt cop who'd been selling information to the Russians, information that got 3 of Jaemin's men killed in an ambush. The enforcer who'd raped a woman under the Midnight Dragon's protection, thinking his position made him untouchable. Each story was ugly, necessary, heavy with the weight of impossible choices. I'm not a good man, Jaemin said when he finished. I don't pretend to be. But I'm not a monster either. I'm just pragmatic. And sometimes pragmatism looks a lot like evil when you're standing on the outside looking in. And the other 3? Amara asked. The ones you didn't kill personally? Business decisions. Threats that needed neutralizing. I gave the orders, other people pulled the triggers. He turned from the window to face her. Does it matter? Dead is dead. My hands have the blood either way. It matters to me. Why? Because I'm trying to figure out if I can love a man who kills. And I think maybe I can love a man who kills to protect. I don't think I can love a man who kills because it's convenient. The word hung in the air between them, love. Neither of them had said it before. It was too big, too dangerous, too real. But there it was, dropped casually into the conversation like a grenade with the pin pulled. You shouldn't love me at all, Jaemin said quietly. Probably not. But I'm Nigerian. We're stubborn. We love who we love, and we deal with the consequences later. Night 3, he told her about his plans. How he was trying to legitimize the Midnight Dragons, move them away from protection rackets and smuggling toward real business, real estate development, tech investments, corporate consulting. It was a 5-year plan, maybe 10, to transition from criminal empire to legitimate corporation while maintaining enough of the old structure to keep his people fed and loyal. Basically, I'm trying to become Samsung, he said with dark humor. Except Samsung's founding family didn't have to kill their way to respectability. They just had to wait a generation. Will it work? Amara asked. They were in his bed now, not having sex, not yet, just lying together in the dark while Soul hummed below them. She'd been coming to his penthouse every night for a week, and her roommate thought she was staying with a study group. Which wasn't entirely false. She was learning more about power structures and economic systems from Jaemin than any textbook could teach. I don't know, he admitted. The old guard doesn't like it. They think I'm going soft. Choi, the man who followed you, he's been pushing for a coup. Wants to take over the Midnight Dragons, take them back to the old ways. More violence, more visible, more brutal. What are the old ways? Remember the Korean gangs from the 80s and 90s? The ones who'd walk into restaurants and beat people in broad daylight? Who controlled entire neighborhoods through fear? Who treated violence like marketing? Jaemin's voice was tight. That's what Choi wants. A return to when being a gangster meant being a monster everyone could see. And you don't want that. I want to survive. I want my people to survive. And you can't survive in modern Seoul by being a cartoon villain. The government's too strong, the police too well-funded, the public too connected. You have to be smart. Subtle. You have to look like a legitimate businessman while doing illegitimate things. He paused. At least until you can actually become a legitimate businessman. That's surprisingly strategic. I didn't build an empire by being stupid. Amara rolled onto her side, studying his profile in the darkness. What happens if Choi wins? If he takes over? Then I die. And probably everyone loyal to me dies with me. That's how these things work. Very reassuring. You asked for truth, not reassurance. She kissed him then, and this time when they came together it was with the urgency of people who'd finally stopped pretending this was casual, that they could walk away, that they hadn't already fallen too far to climb back out. Afterward, lying in the tangle of expensive sheets while Jaemin's breathing evened into something like peace, Amara made a decision that would change everything. She was going to help him. The thing about Amara Okafor that people consistently underestimated was that she wasn't just smart, she was strategic. You didn't grow up as a Nigerian woman planning to work in international business without learning how to navigate complex power structures, read unspoken hierarchies, and turn apparent weaknesses into unexpected strengths. She'd spent 2 years studying Asian business culture, Korean economic policy, and the intersection of formal and informal power systems. She'd written papers on how Seoul's chaebols, the massive family conglomerates that controlled Korea's economy, had transitioned from post-war smuggling operations to legitimate corporations. Jaemin was trying to do in 10 years what had taken Samsung, Hyundai, and LG entire generations. But maybe, with the right strategy, it could be done faster. I have an idea, she said one morning over breakfast, coffee, and toast in Jaemin's kitchen while he read the business section of the Chosen Ilbo and she sketched diagrams on napkins. Should I be worried? Probably. But hear me out. She pushed her napkin toward him. You're thinking about legitimization wrong. You're trying to slowly transition from criminal to legitimate, which means you're stuck in this awkward middle phase where you're not criminal enough to scare people and not legitimate enough to be trusted. Thank you for that devastating assessment of my life's work. I'm not finished. What you need is a catalyst, something that forces the transition all at once. Something big enough that it changes the entire narrative. Jaemin set down his newspaper, interested despite himself. I'm listening. You need a legitimate business. Not a front. Not something to launder money through. An actual, real, profitable business that has nothing to do with the Midnight Dragons. Something high-profile enough that it changes how people see you. I have legitimate businesses. You have businesses that are technically legal, but everyone knows are connected to your organization. That's not the same thing. She pulled out her phone, showed him an article she'd bookmarked. Seoul is hosting a huge tech conference next month. Companies from around the world competing for government contracts to develop smart city infrastructure, traffic systems, public safety networks, environmental monitoring. It's a 10 billion won project, maybe more. And you think I should bid on it? With what? My extensive experience in urban planning. No, but I think we should bid on it. You provide the capital and the connections. I provide the actual business plan and the technical knowledge. We create a shell company completely separate from the Midnight Dragons, completely legitimate, and we win that contract. Jaemin stared at her. You're insane. I'm brilliant. There's a difference. Even if we could pull it off, and that's a massive if, it wouldn't change anything overnight. The old guard would still see it as a waste of money. Choi would still want my head. Not if we use the new company to buy them out. Amara was in full business mode now, talking with her hands, her eyes bright with the kind of strategic thinking that had won her a scholarship to one of Korea's top universities. You take the profits from the tech contract, use it to set up legitimate positions for your key people. Give them real jobs, real salaries, real futures that don't involve prison or early graves. Make loyalty profitable in a way that doesn't require violence. And the ones who won't go legitimate? You give them a choice. Join the new world or get left behind in the old one. No middle ground. It was brilliant. It was insane. It was exactly the kind of bold, risky, potentially disastrous move that might actually work. You've been thinking about this, Jaemin said slowly. For 2 weeks. Since you told me about your 5-year plan. Amara met his eyes. I know I'm an outsider. I know I'm just a student who's been in your life for barely 2 months. But I also know business. And I know that sometimes the best solutions come from people who aren't trapped in the old ways of thinking. If this fails, it could destroy everything. If you do nothing, Choi will destroy everything anyway. At least this way, you're choosing how it ends. Jaemin was quiet for a long time, running calculations, weighing risks, considering angles. Finally, he smiled, that rare, genuine smile that made him look 10 years younger. Okay, he said. Let's do something spectacularly stupid together. They spent the next 3 weeks building a company from nothing. Myri Solutions Future Solutions in Korean. A tech startup focused on smart city infrastructure, founded by Kang Jae-min, businessman, investor, definitely not a crime boss, and Amara Okafor, international business consultant, recent graduate of Seoul National University's MBA program. She'd finished early, skipped a semester, made it work. Amara wrote the business plan, pulling all-nighters fueled by coffee and determination. Jaemin provided the capital, clean money, carefully laundered through 3 different corporate shells until it was impossible to trace back to the Midnight Dragons. They hired actual engineers, actual designers, actual experts who had no idea their new employer had ever broken a law. The bid they submitted was perfect, innovative, cost-effective, technically sound, and backed by enough capital to prove they were serious. Amara presented it herself at the preliminary review, her Igbo-accented Korean charming the government officials, her passion for urban development genuine enough to overcome any skepticism about her age or background. They made it to the final round. And that's when everything went wrong. The first bomb threat came on a Tuesday. Called into the government office that was reviewing bids, claiming Myri Solutions was a front for North Korean agents. Absurd, easily disproven, but enough to delay the process. The second came 2 days later. This time, someone leaked confidential documents to the press suggesting Myri Solutions was connected to organized crime. The documents were fakes, good fakes, but the damage was done. The media loved a scandal. The third attack was personal. Amara was leaving campus when 3 men grabbed her, dragged her into a van, and drove her to a warehouse that smelled like old fish and fresh terror. Choi was waiting for her, that scarred smile wide and welcoming. Miss Okafor, he said in English, heavily accented but clear. We finally meet properly. I am Choi Min-ho. I've heard so much about you. Amara's heart was hammering, but she kept her face calm. Her father had taught her, never let them see fear. Fear is blood in the water. I'd say it's a pleasure, but we both know I'd be lying. Choi laughed. Spirit. I like that. I see why Jaemin keeps you around. But tell me, do you know what you've done? The chaos you've caused. I've helped build a legitimate business. If that's chaos, your definition needs work. You've made the wolf weak. You've given him hope. Hope is the most dangerous thing you can give a man like Kang Jaemin. Choi circled her like a shark, and Amara noticed the other men in the warehouse, at least a dozen, all armed, all watching. He used to be pure, focused. Now he wastes time on tech companies and foreign girlfriends. He's forgotten what we are. Maybe what you're needs to change. Or maybe he does. Choi stopped in front of her. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Jaemin. You're going to tell him to withdraw the Myri Solutions bid and return the Midnight Dragons to traditional operations. You're going to convince him that his little experiment in legitimacy is over. And if I don't? Then I'll send him your fingers, one at a time, until he agrees. Starting with this one. Choi grabbed her left hand, pulled out a knife that looked like it had seen extensive use. Such pretty hands. Would be a shame to ruin them. Amara looked at the knife, at Choi's scarred face, at the men surrounding her. She thought about Jaemin, about the life they were trying to build, about the choice between safety and principle. And she made her decision. No, she said calmly. I won't call him. I won't convince him of anything. Because if I give in to you, I'm teaching him that threats work. That violence wins. That we should go back to being what you want instead of becoming what we could be. She met Choi's eyes. So do what you're going to do. But know that every finger you take, every drop of blood you spill, just proves that Jaemin is right and you're wrong. Choi stared at her for a long moment, then started laughing. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the stupidest. I'm Nigerian. We're usually both. He raised the knife. And the warehouse exploded. Not literally, but close. The doors burst open with the sound of splintering wood and shouted commands. Jaemin came through first, gun drawn, flanked by Park Dong-wook and a dozen Midnight Dragons. Behind them, impossibly, were police, actual police, led by a detective Amara recognized from the news. Drop the weapon, the detective commanded in Korean. Choi Min-ho, you're under arrest for kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder. Choi's face went white, then red. You brought cops? You brought cops to a gang dispute? I brought justice, Jaemin said coldly. Turns out, when you threaten the life of a foreign national who's helping the Seoul government with a major infrastructure project, the police take it seriously. Especially when you're stupid enough to make those threats on recorded phone calls. You're wearing a wire, Choi breathed, staring at Amara with new understanding. She's wearing a wire. Actually, Amara said, pulling a small recording device from her bra. I am. Jaemin insisted. Said you'd probably monologue. He was right. What happened next was chaos, Choi's men dropping weapons, police swarming, arrests being made with the efficient brutality of law enforcement doing its job. Through it all, Jaemin kept his gun trained on Choi, his expression carved from ice. You should have adapted, Jaemin said quietly. Should have evolved. But you wanted to stay in the past, stay brutal, stay stupid. Now you get to stay in prison. This isn't over, Choi spat. You think you can just leave this life? You think you can just walk away? I'm not walking away. I'm running towards something better. There's a difference. The police dragged Choi away, still screaming threats, still not understanding that the world had changed and he hadn't changed with it. When the warehouse finally emptied, when it was just Jaemin and Amara and the settling dust, he pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. Never again, he whispered into her hair. Never again. I can't if something happened to you. I'm okay. I'm here. We're okay. We're not okay. We're insane. We're in the middle of a war, and we're pretending we can win it with business plans and recorded confessions. But we are winning it. Amara pulled back to look at him. Choi's done. Half his supporters are under arrest. The bid is still alive. We're actually doing it, Jaemin. We're actually changing things. He wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe her. But Kang Jaemin hadn't survived this long by believing in fairy tales. And that's why, 3 days later, when Myri Solutions won the government contract, when newspapers ran stories about the innovative tech startup bringing modern solutions to Seoul's infrastructure, when everything seemed to be working exactly as planned, that's when Park Dong-wook came to Jaemin with a gun and a terrible choice. And that's when Jaemin finally understood that some empires can't be legitimized. They can only burn. Chapter 5: The Dragon's Sacrifice. The bullet was already in the air. But before we get to how it ended, you need to understand how it all fell apart. 3 days after the contract win. The celebration was supposed to be small, just Jaemin, Amara, Park, and a few key Midnight Dragons who'd supported the legitimization plan. Champagne in Jaemin's penthouse, toasts to new beginnings, the kind of cautious optimism that comes from winning a battle while knowing the war isn't over. Park arrived late, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was his expression, carved from stone, eyes carrying the weight of impossible decisions. "We need to talk," he said to Jaemin, alone. They stepped out onto the balcony while Amara chatted with the others inside, her laugh carrying through the glass like music. Jaemin watched her for a moment, this woman who'd crashed into his life and rearranged everything, who'd made him believe that wolves could become men again. "They're not going to let you do it," Park said without preamble. "Who?" "The families." Park pulled out his phone, showed Jaemin a series of messages. "The Big Five. They've been meeting. Discussing the Kong Jaemin problem." The families were the old guard, the 5 major crime organizations that had controlled Seoul's underworld for generations. The Midnight Dragons were powerful, but they were new money, upstarts, tolerated only because Jaemin had been careful never to challenge the established hierarchy. Until now. "They see what you're doing," Park continued. "They see you legitimizing, going clean, and they're terrified. Because if you succeed, if you prove that criminal empires can transition to legitimate business, then their own people will start asking why they can't do the same. You're not just changing the Midnight Dragons. You're threatening their entire system. So what do they want? You dead? Or back in line? They're offering a deal. Abandon Myri Solutions, return to traditional operations, publicly acknowledge that the families still run Seoul's underworld. Do that, and they'll let you live. Maybe even let you keep your territory. And if I refuse?" Park's silence was answer enough. Jaemin stared out at Seoul's skyline, at the city that had raised him, broken him, made him what he was. "How long do we have?" "A week. Maybe less. They're already moving assets, calling in favors. This isn't like Choi, some hothead making a power play. This is coordinated. Professional." Park's voice cracked slightly. "Jaemin, they're going to kill everyone close to you. Everyone who supported the legitimization. They're going to make an example that'll last a generation. Including you? Especially me. I'm your second. Your oldest friend. Killing me sends a message." Park lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "But that's not why I'm here." "Then why are you here?" Park turned to face him, and Jaemin saw something in his friend's eyes that made his blood run cold. Not fear. Resignation. "Because they came to me first," Park said quietly. "Before the ultimatum. Before the threats. They came to me with an offer: kill you, take over the Midnight Dragons, return everything to how it was. In exchange, I get to live. My family gets to live. And I get your empire." The words hung in the air like smoke. "When?" Jaemin asked, his voice level despite the adrenaline suddenly screaming through his veins. "Tonight. During the celebration. They want it public. Want your own people to see that even loyalty has a price." Park's laugh was bitter, broken. "They know me too well. Know that I'd never betray you for money or power. But for my mother? My sister? For the family I've been trying to protect since I was 15. You're telling me this why? Professional courtesy before you shoot me? I'm telling you because I can't do it." Park's eyes were wet now, his tough guy mask finally cracking. "I can't. 20 years we've been brothers. 20 years you've had my back, and I've had yours. I can't be the one to put you down, even if it means my mother dies. Even if it means I die. I can't." Jaemin felt something in his chest crack wider. That fissure Amara had started now spreading like earthquake damage. "What do you need?" "I need you to run. Tonight. Take Amara, get on a plane, disappear. Go somewhere the families can't reach. Singapore, Dubai, Lagos, I don't care. Just go. And leave you? Leave everyone. I'll handle the families. I'll tell them you escaped, that I tried but failed. They'll kill me probably. But your people, the ones who aren't part of this, they'll survive. The families just want you gone. They don't care about the foot soldiers. That's bullshit and you know it. They'll purge anyone loyal to me. Anyone who supported legitimization. It'll be a bloodbath. Better than everyone dying, including you. They stood in silence, two men who'd built an empire together now facing its end. Inside, Amara laughed at something, the sound piercing Jaemin's heart like glass. There's another option, Jaemin said slowly. Don't. I meet with the families. Negotiate. They don't want negotiation. They want submission or death. Then I give them submission. Publicly. I abandon my solutions, return to traditional operations, acknowledge their authority. Jaemin's mind was already working, already calculating. But privately I keep building. Keep planning. Keep moving toward legitimization, just slower. Quieter. That's not you. You don't submit to anyone. I do if it keeps people alive. Jaemin turned to look at Amara through the glass. I do if it keeps her alive. Park followed his gaze. She'll hate you for it. She'll think you gave up. Better she hate me alive than love me dead. Is it? Before Jaemin could answer, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Kong Jaemin. The voice was old, cultured, speaking Korean with the sole accent of someone born to power. This is Jin Taeyong. We need to meet. Jin Taeyong. Head of the oldest of the 5 families. A man who'd been running Seoul's underworld since before Jaemin was born. When? Jaemin asked. Now. The warehouse district. Come alone or people start dying. The line went dead. Park was already shaking his head. It's a trap. Obviously it's a trap. Of course it's a trap. Jaemin headed inside, grabbed his jacket. But it's also an opening. Amara looked up as he passed, her smile fading when she saw his expression. What's wrong? Business. I'll be back in a few hours. Jaemin. Stay here. Park will keep you safe. He kissed her forehead, breathing in her scent, cocoa butter and determination. I love you. Remember that. You're scaring me. Good. Fear keeps you alive. He was out the door before she could argue, Park following despite his protests, and neither of them saw Amara pull out her phone, dial a number she'd hoped she'd never have to use. The warehouse district, 11:47 p.m. The warehouse was in Incheon, the same one where Jaemin had dealt with the Chinese smuggling issue months ago. Appropriate, really. Everything in his life seemed to circle back to warehouses and impossible choices. Jin Taeyong was waiting inside with an entourage that looked like a Yakuza recruitment poster, hard men in expensive suits, faces carrying the accumulated violence of decades. The old man himself was 70 if he was a day, white-haired and elegant, looking more like a retired professor than Korea's most powerful crime boss. Come Jaemin, Jin said warmly, like they were old friends meeting for tea. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? We always have choices. The question is whether we're willing to pay the price for them. Jin gestured to a chair. Please. Sit. Let's talk like civilized men. Jaemin sat, very aware of the guns pointed at him from every angle. Park stood behind him, hand near his weapon, eyes tracking threats. You've caused quite a stir, Jin continued. This Myri Solutions venture. Very innovative. Very bold. Very stupid. Stupid how? Because you forgot the fundamental rule of our world. We exist in the shadows. We thrive because we're invisible. The moment we step into the light, we die, either literally or metaphorically. You're trying to drag an entire criminal empire into legitimacy, and you're doing it so loudly that even the Seoul metropolitan government is paying attention. Jin's smile was grandfatherly, terrifying. Do you understand what that means for the rest of us? It means you're scared. We're concerned. There's a difference. You see, young man, the system works because everyone plays their role. Politicians pretend to fight crime while taking our money. Police arrest enough of us to look effective while leaving the important operations alone. The public gets to feel safe while we control everything that matters. It's a beautiful dance, perfected over generations. And I'm stepping on toes. You're burning down the ballroom. Jin's voice hardened. If you succeed, if you prove that criminal organizations can legitimize, can join the daylight world without consequences, then every young gangster will try the same thing. The system will collapse. The dance will end. And we can't allow that. So you want me dead? I want you compliant. There's a difference. You're smart, Kong Jae-min, ambitious, ruthless when necessary. Under other circumstances, you'd have been an excellent addition to our leadership. But you've made yourself a problem, and problems need solutions. What's the solution? Jin pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. You abandon Myri Solutions tonight. You issue a public statement citing unforeseen complications and withdraw your bid. You return the Midnight Dragons to traditional operations, protection, smuggling, loans. You acknowledge the Five Families' authority and accept that Seoul's underworld has a hierarchy you must respect. And if I do this? You live. Your people live. Your foreign girlfriend lives. Everyone goes back to their comfortable positions, and we all pretend this unfortunate episode never happened. And if I refuse? Jin's smile never wavered. Then tonight, 17 people die. Tomorrow, 17 more. We'll keep killing everyone connected to you until there's nothing left but memories and regret. We'll start with Park Dong-wook's family. I believe his mother makes excellent kimchi. Then we'll move to your other lieutenants. Then to everyone who works at Myri Solutions. And we'll save your Nigerian princess for last, because I'm old but not cruel. She'll have time to mourn you before she joins you. The casualness with which Jin described mass murder was more terrifying than any threat could be. How long do I have to decide? Jaemin asked. You're deciding now. Then I need to make a phone call. To whom? The woman you're threatening to kill. She deserves to know what I'm choosing. Jin considered, then nodded. One call. On speaker. No codes, no tricks. Jaemin pulled out his phone, dialed Amara, put it on speaker. She answered on the first ring. Jaemin? Where are you? Warehouse in Incheon. Meeting with some people about our future. Our future. Her voice was steady, which meant she was terrified. Amara only got calm when she was scared. That sounds ominous. It is. They want me to choose. Give up Myri Solutions and return to traditional operations, or everyone I care about dies. Including you. Silence on the line. Then, what are you going to do? I'm going to ask you a question first. If I choose you, choose your life, choose safety, but it means giving up everything we've built. Can you live with that? Jaemin. Answer the question, Amara. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice carried the strength he'd fallen in love with. No. I can't live with that. Because if you give up now, if you let them terrorize you into submission, then they win. They prove that violence is stronger than hope. And I didn't fall in love with the wolf. I fell in love with the man who was trying to become something better. Jin was watching Jaemin with interest, like he was observing a particularly fascinating experiment. Even if it means you die? Jaemin asked quietly. Even if it means I die. But preferably, let's find option 3 where nobody dies and we still win. Despite everything, Jaemin smiled. Option 3. Any ideas? Actually, yes. But you're not going to like it. Tell me anyway. Remember how I said the Seoul metropolitan government takes threats against foreign nationals seriously? Turns out they really take threats seriously when the foreign national is actively working on a major infrastructure project. I called Detective Park after you left, the one who arrested Choi. Told him I felt unsafe, that I'd received threats related to Myri Solutions. Jin's expression shifted from interested to concerned. He's very motivated, Amara continued. Something about cleaning up corruption in Seoul, making a name for himself. And when I mentioned that these threats might be connected to organized crime families, he got even more interested. In fact, I believe he's requesting emergency surveillance warrants right now for, let me check my notes, individuals suspected of conspiracy to commit murder against a foreign national engaged in government contract work. Jin stood, his men reaching for weapons. Oh, Amara said cheerfully, and I should mention that this call is being recorded and streamed directly to Detective Park's office. So that lovely speech about killing 17 people? That's admissible evidence. Hi, Mr. Jean. I'm Amara Okafor. I don't believe we've been formally introduced, but I'm looking forward to testifying at your trial. The warehouse erupted. Jin's men drew weapons. Park pulled his gun, putting himself between Jaemin and the nearest threat. And outside, the sound of sirens began to wail, not distant, but close, getting closer. You stupid girl, Jean hissed. You've killed yourself. You've killed everyone. Maybe, Amara said. Or maybe I've just changed the game. See, you operate in shadows because shadows are safe. But I grew up in Lagos, Mr. Jean. I learned that the best way to fight corruption isn't to hide from it, it's to drag it into the light and let it burn. So go ahead. Kill us. But do it knowing that every cop in Seoul is about to descend on that warehouse. Do it knowing that you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Do it knowing that you lost to a 24-year-old exchange student with a phone and a plan. The sirens were deafening now. Jean looked at Jaemin, and something like respect flickered in his old eyes. You chose well. She's magnificent. I know. Pity I'm going to have to kill her anyway. He pulled a gun. And that's when Park Dong-wook stepped between them. No, Park said quietly. You're not. Your loyalty is touching but irrelevant. My loyalty isn't to Jaemin. Not anymore. Park's gun was steady, aimed at Jin's heart. My loyalty is to the idea that maybe, just maybe, we can be something other than what we've always been. That maybe an orphan from the streets and a Nigerian student and a gangster trying to save his mother can change Seoul's underworld into something that doesn't eat its children. The warehouse doors burst open. Police flooded in dozens of them, led by Detective Park, no relation, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands in Korean and English. Jin's men dropped their weapons. Smart. They were criminals, not suicidal. But Jean himself just smiled that grandfatherly smile, even as officers surrounded him. This isn't over. You know that, don't you, Kong Jaemin? Even if I go to prison, even if the 5 families fall, there will always be someone else. Someone who wants what you've built. Someone who will threaten what you love. Probably, Jaemin agreed. But tonight, it's over. And tomorrow, we'll deal with tomorrow. 3 months later. The bullet that never came. Instead, there was a trial, massive, public, sensational. Jean Taeyong and 17 members of the 5 families arrested on conspiracy charges, attempted murder, organized crime activities spanning decades. The kind of trial that changed cities, that rewrote power structures, that made police commissioners into mayors and detectives into legends. Detective Park became a national hero. Amara became a minor celebrity, the brave student who brought down Seoul's criminal empire, which was an overstatement but made for good headlines. Myri Solutions completed its first project ahead of schedule and under budget, winning accolades and additional contracts. And Jaemin. Jaemin became something he'd never expected to be, legitimate. Not perfectly legitimate. The Midnight Dragons still existed, still operated in gray areas. But they were transitioning, slowly but surely, into a security and consulting firm that happened to employ a lot of former criminals who were surprisingly good at protecting people and solving problems. You know this is insane, right? Amara said one evening, lying next to him in bed, their bed now, in an apartment they'd chosen together, one that cost less than his penthouse, but felt more like home. We should be dead. By every logical calculation, we should be very dead. But we're not. But we're not. She turned to face him, her earth-colored eyes bright in the darkness. Why do you think that is? Because you were brave. Because Park was loyal. Because sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys actually win. You think we're the good guys? I think we're trying to be. That has to count for something. Amara kissed him, slow and sweet and full of promise. I'm supposed to go back to Nigeria next month. My visa's expiring. I know. I've been offered a job with the Seoul Metropolitan Government, working on international business development. It would extend my visa. Let me stay. Are you asking my permission? I'm asking if you want me to stay. Jaemin pulled her closer, breathing in her scent, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. I want you to stay forever. But I also want you to be free to choose. To build your own life. To not be defined by being the wolf's girlfriend. Ex-wolf, Amara corrected. You're retired, remember? Reformed. There's a difference. Reformed wolf. That should be your business card title. They lay in comfortable silence, and Jaemin thought about how far they'd come. From a rainy night in Gangnam to this moment, alive, together, building something that looked dangerously like a future. Jaemin. Amara said sleepily. Yes. You know that Nigerian proverb I told you? About the dog that won't hear the whistle. I remember. We have another one. However far the stream flows, it never forgets its source. She propped herself up on one elbow, looking at him with those impossibly wise eyes. You came from the streets. You built an empire from nothing. You were the wolf. That's your source, and you should never forget it. But streams don't stay at their source. They move. They grow. They become rivers, and rivers become oceans, and oceans touch everything. So what are you saying? I'm saying you're not the wolf anymore. But you're not just Kong Jaemin the businessman either. You're something new. Something the world hasn't seen before. And I want to be here to watch you become it. Even if it's dangerous? Especially if it's dangerous. I'm Nigerian. We don't run from danger. We charge at it with a detailed business plan and unreasonable optimism. Jaemin laughed, genuinely laughed, the sound echoing in their small apartment, and thought about how this woman had saved him in every way a person could be saved. I love you, Amara Okafor. I know. I love you too, you reformed criminal mastermind. Outside, Seoul hummed with 10 million lives, 10 million stories, 10 million chances to fail or succeed or simply survive another day. But inside, in their small apartment with its mismatched furniture and ambitious dreams, Kang Jaemin and Amara Okafor held each other and planned their impossible future. Because sometimes, just sometimes, wolves learn to walk in daylight. And sometimes, against all odds and logic and probability, the good guys actually win. Not completely. Not perfectly. But enough. And enough, it turned out, was everything. Epilogue, 1 year later. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for Myri Solutions' new headquarters was covered by 3 major news networks and approximately 50 reporters, which was either excessive or perfect, depending on how you felt about publicity. Jaemin felt conflicted about it. Stop fidgeting, Amara whispered, adjusting his tie. She was wearing a tailored suit, Korean fashion with Nigerian fabric, the kind of fusion that perfectly captured who they'd become. You look like you're about to rob the place, not open it. Old habits. Reformed habits. On stage, the mayor of Seoul was giving a speech about innovation and public-private partnerships and the importance of second chances. He didn't mention that Kang Jaemin used to run half of Seoul's criminal underworld. That was the unspoken agreement. The past stayed buried as long as the future stayed clean. Park Dong-wook stood off to the side, now officially COO of Myri Solutions, having proven surprisingly adept at corporate management. Turned out the skills that made you a good gangster organization, loyalty, strategic thinking, translated well to legitimate business. His mother was in the front row, beaming with pride that her son had a real job now. The ceremony concluded with champagne and networking, and Jaemin found himself shaking hands with people who would have crossed the street to avoid him a year ago. This is surreal, he muttered to Amara during a brief quiet moment. This is success, she corrected. You built something real. Something that helps people. Something that lasts. We built it. You're the one who had the crazy idea in the first place. I'm Nigerian. Crazy ideas are our national export. They were interrupted by a young woman, early 20s, nervous energy, clutching a portfolio like a lifeline. Excuse me, Mr. Kong? I'm Jiwon. I just graduated from KAIST with a degree in urban planning, and I wanted to say, thank you. Your story, what you overcame to build this company, it inspired me to think differently about success. About redemption. She blushed. I know that's probably weird to say to a stranger, but I wanted you to know that what you've done matters. It changes things. Jaemin looked at this earnest young woman, then at Amara, Then at the building behind them, glass and steel and possibility, built on the ruins of his old life. "Thank you," he said, genuinely meaning it. "That means more than you know." As Ji-won walked away, Amara slipped her hand into his. "See? You're inspiring the youth. Next thing you know, they'll want you to give TED Talks." "Absolutely not." "Guest lecture at my alma mater? Maybe. Motivational posters?" "Now you're just mocking me." They stood together, watching Seoul's sunset paint the sky in oranges and purples, and Jaemin thought about the distance between who he'd been and who he was becoming. It wasn't a straight line. It was messy, complicated, full of compromises and difficult choices. But it was his. "Jaemin," Amara said quietly. If you could go back to that rainy night when you first saw me, would you do it all again? Knowing what it would cost? Knowing how hard it would be?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes. Every single time, yes." "Why?" "Because you taught me something I'd forgotten. That change is possible. That wolves can become men. That Korean crime bosses and Nigerian students can build impossible dreams together." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "Because loving you made me want to be someone worthy of being loved back." "That's disgustingly romantic." "I know. I've been practicing." They stayed on that rooftop as Seoul's lights began to flicker on, 10 million stories beginning their evening chapters. And among all those stories, theirs was just one small, unlikely, built from rain and violence and the stubborn belief that people could change. But it was theirs. And it was real. And sometimes, in a world of shadows and compromises and impossible choices, real was all that mattered. The wolf had learned to walk in daylight. And the daylight had welcomed him home. The end.